What's going on, guys? Jason Frausto for TennisUnleashed.net. Today, I'm breaking down Ben Shelton's forehand technique step by step and checkpoint by checkpoint. If you want to find out all the key technical checkpoints to Ben's forehand technique, stay tuned. It's coming up next. All right, guys, so we got Ben Shelton here, 2023 footage, right? And also 2023 on the right. So two different sets of Ben Shelton. I believe these clips are Washington, D.C., 2023 this year. Let's go ahead, let's break down his technique here from the side view and the back view at the exact same time. First thing, let's just play this once in real time. Just gonna feel for the speed a little bit of the stroke. There it is, right? Big racketed speed. Ben Shelton made his big breakthrough at the Australian Open in 2023, making the quarterfinals there before losing to Tommy Paul. And now he just made the semifinals at the US Open, where he had some really good wins over Tommy Paul and then Frances Tiafoe before losing to Novak Djokovic. So let's get a very close look at this forehand and talk about things that you can implement from his forehand into yours. First things first, even in a practice session situation, look at the feet here, guys. Just look at the feet. And look at the way he handles himself with his feet, the width of the feet, having rhythm before hitting. So if we just go back for a few frames here and just come forward, look at the feet, the rhythm, the constant shuffling, being ready, and then getting a nice wide split step with his feet right here. So really look at the split step width of the split step and how that split step is always going to be outside of shoulder width apart. Even in a practice session situation where things are a little more casual, look at the width of that split step right here. A little harder to see from this side angle and the side view, but I've included the side view so we can see some different things. A lot of times we'll do back view analysis. I'm always used to doing side and back, especially when I've done a lot of pro player analysis, even 5-10 years ago. Usually use two views at the same time to get a true comparison. So again, look at the split and look at that rhythm leading up to the split. The next thing that we can see with Ben, right, pretty simple and straightforward here. Look at the top hand. He's a lefty, so look at the top hand here on the throat of the racket. Some pros, one-handed pros, will grab the throat of the racket a little higher, even up here, right, towards the top of the throat right here. He grabs a little bit lower on the throat of the racket position like this, a little more of a Nadal position. So it's easier to make his grip change down to the two-handed backhand if he needs to slide that top hand down for his two-hander, right? Then we can see the bottom hand right there. But again, look at this position. Going to hold this position through the unit turn, so just go forward a few frames here and look at this right here. Now, one thing about Ben, right, he does a nice job of having a little space between his elbow and his body right here. I'm a big believer in having a little bit of space between the hitting elbow and the body right here in the side like this, having a little gap like this, okay? But I'm also a big believer that if you have this gap position, that you don't have to have your racket tilted, the racket head forward at an angle more like this. So a lot of players, Nick Kyrgios, these guys will really tilt the racket head forward, right, and really lift the elbow up higher. Ben does not do that at this stage of the swing. He keeps the elbow a little bit more away from the body, but also down, and avoids a severe racket head tilt forward, which is really smart to do because it takes longer then to get through the swing. So we're trying to keep a little space with the elbow, but keep the racket a little more vertical and not tilted so much forward. So just a very slight tilt with the racket here. This is perfect. And then the other hand, right, and arm are also bent in this stage, still supporting the racket and throat as we bring it back. As we come from this point here, look when he releases, right? A lot of people, kind of the modern forehand, what I'm seeing with a lot of modern forehands, Carlos Alcaraz, we see this with Shelton, they're not really releasing the non-hitting hand here until they get to about their back shoulder. It's kind of this wind-up sort of roundhouse forehand technique that's kind of, to me, it's kind of similar to throwing a haymaker in boxing, but they don't release till a little bit closer to the back shoulder, and they get more of this haymaker or home run effect. I'm not saying it's the best way to do it. It's just sort of the trend of what I see with a lot of these guys. At this point, we can see racket, right? The racket is a little bit tilted forward now, a little bit more than it was in the beginning stages of the prep. But we also see there's a little bit bigger gap between the arm, body, and the hitting hand and elbow right here too. So that gap has increased a little bit. What he doesn't do though is really lift that elbow up too much. So it comes up a little bit here, but not as high as some other guys like a Nick Kyrgios. You could probably even pocket that down a little bit lower. And then what we see from Ben, a couple other really big checkpoints, is in this stage of the swing, his belly button, right, is facing the side net, and his hips and his waist are also pointed to the side. So he has a really good coil of the upper body. He's coming back from here again, right to this position. Nice upper body coil right here, and he has a full shoulder turn at this point. More similarities on this haymaker style forehand. A lot of times people have been told in the past, the non-hitting arm, right, that right arm for Ben, has to completely straighten out and extend away from the body. And to me, this creates a little bit of a rigid forehand. He does not do that. He doesn't get completely straight with the non-hitting arm here. Same thing on this one here. Alcaraz actually does the same thing. He does not straighten out that non-hitting arm completely. They kind of have the arm in a little bit of a bent position because I believe for both of these guys, it's just a little bit more natural for each one of them to achieve this position than to completely straighten out the arm. Not saying it's something bad to straighten out that arm completely. It can be used to measure the distance, but I think forcing it to completely straighten can be a little robotic and a little rigid. This to me, a little bit more natural in this sort of haymaker style forehand. So again, what's the haymaker kind of consist of? Not letting go until you get to about the back shoulder. It's more of a wind up and deliver power technique. And then we're seeing with both Alcaraz and Shelton, the non-hitting arm not getting completely straight for the shot. The next big key that we see in this style of forehand, right, we can see the racket strings because of the grip position as well, slightly tilted down towards the ground. And the palm of the hand here is also kind of pointed down towards the ground. We can also see that Ben on this shot, right, hitting from a semi-open stance forehand. So look at the position of the feet. The right foot is loaded. The left foot is loaded. He's really bent and getting ready to explode in the shot, not only on this shot, but also this one. Again, semi-open stance on this forehand. So not a completely open stance, but really loading the back leg, okay? So from this position, we'll just go forward, guys. One thing that's kind of interesting about this type of forehand too, when he's dropping the racket, right? So all he's doing is kind of doing a little bit of a loop on his forehand and bringing his hand, the hitting hand down. And then at this stage right here, guys, he's just going to keep dropping his hand down and now extending his arm a little bit. And then at that point right here, we can see that the tip of the racket is dropping into a similar position to where the oncoming ball is, right? So this ball is coming in right here, and we can see that racket is dropping down the tip of it in a similar line to where that ball is. So that can be helpful for hitting the ball. But again, it starts to fall here, drop, drop, drop. And then from this position, guys, now what he's going to start to do, right, is those legs that were bent before like this, those legs are going to start to extend up. And then he starts to uncoil the body here and starts to rotate like this. And when that rotation happens, we're going to notice the key technical checkpoint that every major forehand on tour achieves. That is the tip of the racket will get behind the hitting elbow. We see this with all of the biggest forehands in the world, including Mr. Shelton, who hit a 107-mile-an-hour forehand to achieve one of the biggest forehands at the US Open this year, if not the biggest. And another thing you can do to achieve this position, besides uncoiling the legs and the hips and starting to rotate, you just want to keep this arm and hand relaxed in this position. You don't want it to be too stiff. So just relax the hitting hand here and the hitting arm in this position. Again, we can see the hitting arm starts to drop and extend down a little bit for him here. And then we relax it, and that's when we get that big tip flip behind the hitting elbow in this position. Also in this position, we will see that the butt cap of the racket will now point forward towards the ball on both sides of the screen. It's pointing forward. And then from that position, guys, we continue to uncoil into contact right here, right? Especially on this side. And one thing I'm looking for at contact is that your chest and your hips are facing towards the net. This is a practice situation. Something we also see even in a practice situation usually is the hitting elbow right here will usually be in front of the hips at contact for increased leverage and power on the forehand. If we're contacting the ball a little further back, that typically means we're playing a little bit more of a defensive shot. So we want contact with that elbow to be just in front of the hips out here at contact for leverage and pace. And then another thing that we notice on a very good modern forehand, right, is that when we're at contact here, the edge or tip of the racket right here, the tip of the racket will be below and tilted a little bit down from the hitting hand to increase topspin levels on the stroke. That's very important. And then from here, guys, what we want to do is we want to contact the ball right here. And I'm going to draw a line with his hand. And then one thing some of my students are guilty of that they need to work on is taking the hitting hand and really extending out past that line and rolling over and really driving that hand forward. And look at the progress that he's made, right? If we go from here at contact, a lot of people don't extend on the shot. Look at his extension and how much he's gone through that ball. Look at how much further his hand has gone through that ball after contact. A lot of people don't get great extension. They pull off the ball and don't extend in through, and they're missing depth and power on their shot. Last couple things here real quick. Just coming here. Let's go back to contact, right? And then at this point right here, we've made contact, and now the strings of the racket should point towards the opponent after contact, and we should make that windshield wiper and turn that racket over. And then at the end, what I'm looking for is the butt cap of the racket, your racket, pointing towards your opponent, both sides. And then we also want to see that your belly button is not just facing the net at this point, but it's rotated even further off to the right after contact. So we have full rotation. And then look at how much the shoulders have rotated here. If we just come from here, we go forward, look at the shoulders continue to rotate after contact as he follows through. And your follow through, a lot of people ask about follow through. Your follow through is just a result of the type of shot you're trying to hit from the part of the court that you're trying to hit it here. Ben is driving these a little bit more. He's driving through these balls a little bit more. So because he's driving through these balls a little bit more, the contact and follow through, he's going for height and clearance. It's a higher follow through. I mean, look at how high this ball is hit over the net. Look at that net clearance, right? What is that? 4 to 5 feet over the net, 3 feet minimum at least. So he's using a higher follow through on this ball, and he's just trying to achieve a lot of depth, which he does on that shot right there. Look at the depth and the net clearance. And then he gets ready for the next one. All right, guys, that wraps it up for this video on Ben Shelton's forehand technique. If you found this video helpful or you feel like you learned something that you can apply to your own game today, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button, drop comments, and leave questions below. I'm Jason Frausto for tennisunleashed.net. I'll see you next time.